Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
Okay, so let's get over to our main topic for today. That is simply, we're going to talk about changing patterns because, no matter how old you are, you have a pattern, from the pretty much the time you're born, right? You've got a pattern. You've got a pattern for eating. You got a pattern for sleeping. You like to wake up. Some of you know, hey, I'm a morning person. I'm a night person. I'm a midday person. I get tired at this time, etc., etc. But our patterns are those habits, those things are those concepts, if you will, are the actual driving force that begin to determine so many things about who we are and what we have available. For example, you may not have heard this before. I'm going to expand upon it a little bit, but it's called the process of manifestation. The process of manifestation. What it simply is suggesting is, how do things come into being? How does something come from nothing or a perceived nothing? Where does it start? What is the process and how does it end? For example, it is stated that oftentimes things begin with a thought or an idea. You have a thought long enough, and what it begins to create within you are feelings. Those feelings persist long enough and they become beliefs. Those beliefs grow stronger and motivate you to take action, and you create activity. As you go out there to create activity, you begin to develop and experience results. You get enough of those results, and what begins to form are habits. And enough of those habits, or repeating those habits consistently over time, they begin to shape your character. And then from your character, you reap your destiny. So it starts with your thoughts, begins and goes through the process of feelings, beliefs, activities, results, habits, eventually resulting in character and destiny. When I say character, these are things that you are absolutely known for. For example, some of you are known for speeding, okay? I know that in the past year or so, I've definitely gotten more than one speeding ticket, and I shouldn't have done it, and that was totally wrong. But I am definitely known for possibly, looking before I leap, or speeding, or jumping ahead in a lot of ways, because that's just part of who I am. In fact, I often tell people I'm the guy who is, how they say, fire, aim, ready? That's how I describe myself. I'm more of a fire, aim, ready kind of person, more than a ready, aim, fire person. And some of you are ready, aim, ready, aim, ready, and then you completely change subjects and you never fire. But you get what I'm saying. It all typically starts with a thought that leads to a feeling that leads to a belief, activity, results, habits, character, and then a destiny. What we must begin to do is to reshape all of those things, and starting with our thoughts. And that's the whole point of this podcast, Cashflow Diary, etc., is to help shape some of those thoughts that lead to creating the destiny as it relates to, owning business, being able to build or maintain or grow or own a a portfolio of real estate or anything for that matter, because a lot of the techniques and a lot of the characteristics and thought processes, they transfer very, very well and they go all across the board. So these the process of manifestation, if you will, is something that we must pay attention to. A book out there that can help you with some of these things and tangibly is Gary Keller's book. It's, the millionaire real estate investor. And he talks about a process of becoming that real estate investor by first learning to think like a millionaire, buy $1 million worth of real estate, own $1 million worth of equity, and receive $1 million, dollars in cash. That's exactly the process that we're referring to, but he's stating it in a completely different way. You may have heard it in many different forms. At the end of the day, you've got to be aware that you have habits that are formed from all of this that determine where you end up. And the fun part is, at least what I consider to be part of the fun, is that all of us are in the process of becoming. We're in the process of becoming something. The question is are we becoming that something consciously? Or are we just, existing and meandering through life and taking it as we come? So let's talk about some of the habits as it relates to a real estate investor. Would a habit of a real estate investor be, say, writing offers? Would a habit of a real estate investor be, say, going to networking events? Would a habit of a real estate investor be growing a database of contacts and understanding what resources they have and what they're looking for? Would developing, say, yourself personally and understanding your own emotions, the difference between fear, greed, and discipline, and being able to help those emotions be tame and grow and understand how you respond to them? Are there any technical requirements, i.e., do you need some additional vocabulary? What are some of those habits? What is the specialized knowledge, as it says in the book Think and Grow Rich, that you would need to have or that a real estate investor needs to have? What are those habits? Would a real estate investor consistently invest in their own education well and above and beyond any sort of technical details necessary so that they could become a better person, so that they could serve more people? So in my opinion, time management per se, I don't know that there's such a thing because I can't manage time. I can't manipulate it, so to speak. I can't make it stop. I can't make it go faster. And there have been times in my investing career where I've wanted both, where you want to make it stop, where all the rent comes in. You're like, ooh, yes, I just love that feeling, right? Or, there have been times where you want it to go faster when, you find out something, bad has happened, or more importantly, a vacancy occurred. You're like, oh, how do we get over that really quickly? But what it comes down to, in my opinion, when we say the word manage, it's just more or less a priority. It comes down to a mindset. We've got to decide what's a priority. Because you and I, you probably already know this, but you and I only get 24 hours in any given day. That's it. No more, no less. So we're all given the exact same amount, and it's how you and I prioritize, those hours, minutes, seconds in a day, right? And that's what makes the difference, in a year. How do you measure a man's life, right? And it comes down to what he or she prioritized. And so what it comes down to is that some of the things that you expect of yourself should be changing now that you're a real estate investor. You should still expect of yourself, even during this time, to write offers. You should still expect of yourself to accept offers, to open escrows, to close escrows, because you're now paid for generating a result. And no better time than right now to generate that result, right? Because after the end of the year becomes the beginning of a new one. And I know one of the number one New Year's resolutions is, hey, I want to lose weight, right? And then the other one right behind it is, I want to make more money. And the deals that you close in January and February are going to get started now, clearly. The investors you find and that contribute capital at the beginning of your new year are going to be probably some of the ones you find right now. And so now it's not the quote unquote time to take off, so to speak. So another piece of that whole time management is also, what you expect from your team. Because if you're working with, lenders, lawyers, and employees or contractors, et cetera, you still need to set time expectations for them, because they may be thinking, hey, it's the fourth quarter, Thanksgiving's coming up. I don't really need to move as fast. And that may or may not be true depending on what you are asking them to do, but it's definitely something you want to think about. You always want to work with the principle of what, when. Always ask people, what are you going to do? When are you going to do it by? And now, like no other time, you don't want that question unanswered, because if you leave what and or when unanswered, then they're free to answer it in any way they like. And then what ends up happening is that you feel like you've lost, time. But let's continue with our cash quote for this particular episode. Simply says, some men have thousands of reasons why they cannot do what they want to do. All they need is one reason why they can. That came to us from Willis Rodney Whitney. What I like is that air of possibility. That's the thing that it's a challenge to hold on to, right? Some men have thousands of reasons why they cannot do what they want to do. I know that all of us can come up with thousands of reasons why something won't work, why it's not the right time, how it doesn't make sense, etc., etc. That it'll be better next year. It'll be better next week. I'll start next Monday. I'm too tall. I'm too short. Whatever it is that you want to say. But all you really need is one reason why you can do something. And if that's you, no, because I believe you can. Because you have that ability within you. And here's the key. When we're afraid, any excuse will do. I'm sure you've heard me say that before, but that's the truth. When we're afraid, when I'm afraid, when you are afraid, any excuse will do. And we'll grab the one, here's the key, we'll grab the one that we know our friends will agree with the easiest first. That'll be the first one we grab. Whatever ones we got. I don't have time. Oh, it's Christmas. Oh, I have holidays. Or it's my kid's birthday. Oh, whatever excuse it is that we can get the most validation for the easiest, that'll be the one that we latch onto, because all of our friends around us will gladly and easily say, hey, that's why you can't do it. Yeah, it makes sense. I have the same issue, blah, 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 blah. All you need is one reason why you can. And your commitment to continue listening, your commitment to continue taking action, your commitment to going in the correct directions and doing the things that are necessary for yourself and your family are the reasons why. Because the pain you feel is the reason why you should. Doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will. Now, when I think about that, it just simply says that, we talk ourselves out of taking any action, let alone the wrong actions. In so many ways. And I know I've done that, in so many times. And it's been a process learning how to crucify I'll call it the demon of doubt, if you will, the thing that sabotages us from actually beginning to take that action. So for some of you, taking action may look like downloading this podcast for the first time. Maybe you just got your first Apple device and I'm one of the first people you're listening to and you're like, what is this and what's going on? I say, hang on, I'll take you on a ride. That much I can promise you. And we can figure it out together on the way through to helping you accomplish some great things. Doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will. So, and it got me to thinking, a couple of questions and some things that I just want to share with you. Let me ask you this question. What is the difference between believing something and knowing it? Simply believing something and knowing it. What is the difference between those two? I submit for your acceptance that it's one word. Experience. That's the difference between believing something is true and knowing it's true, is having some experience with it. Now, if that's the case, where does experience come from? Does experience come from reading the book and watching the seminar and listening? Or does experience come from listening to other people's stories necessarily about what they did and how it went? Does experience come from those places, or does it come from action? Like, for example, some of you out there and you know how to cook. You know how to actually cook well, and you've probably been doing a lot of it lately, right? And maybe you even enjoy it, or maybe it's your profession. It doesn't matter. The point is, the experience. If all you did was read the cookbook, how much experience do you have? You know, you may have never tried a particular recipe before, but you believe you could. Yeah, I can make that. Of course, I can make that. But you don't really know. And there's a difference. Even if it's ingredients you've worked with before, even if it feels hyper familiar and you're like, yeah, I've done it, but I've just not, I've done something like that. I've done things similar. There's a different level of understanding that you gain once you have experience. And I know some of you know exactly what I'm talking about right now. And you're shaking your head. You're like, yeah. But let me ask you this question. Is all and every action you and I going to take going to allow us to receive our desired outcome? Now, be truthful. Every action? Of course not. So does it mean, therefore, that the actions we've taken are of no value or are worthless? I don't think so. So if for instance, I'm in the process of learning to become an investor and I believe I can, but I'm not quite sure, well, clearly the solution is to begin acting like one. All right, that's good. But does it mean every action that I take will be the ones that will result in the desired outcome, this new thing I want to see happen and manifest within my life? No, it doesn't mean that. But does it mean that that action had no value? No. But often that's not our response. We often say, yeah, then that action was worthless and I don't want to waste any quote unquote time going down that road. Can you just teach me and show me the greatest shortcut? Well, let me hopefully adjust something when it comes to taking action that doesn't necessarily result in the direction or the outcome that you're looking for. Why do I say it has value? I say it has great value because now at least you can say that you know a way to not do it. See, before you believed that you could do it, and that's good, and you thought anything you whatever way you thought of or the way that you were thinking, you thought this would result in the desired outcome. But now you have a shot at saying, well, at least I know one way it doesn't work. You say, what's the value in that? Well, because I didn't get what I want. Well, you've actually moved from believing it won't work to knowing it won't work because you're not really sure, and you're moving through this process. And here's I'm going to go completely ridiculous on you for a second. And if nothing else, if you never tried any other way to do that something, whatever that is, you tried one way to write an offer and it didn't work. You tried one way to ask somebody for private capital and it didn't work. You tried one way to drive a car and it didn't work. You tried one way to walk and it didn't work. You tried one way to listen to a podcast and it didn't work. You tried whatever. So if nothing else, and you never tried another way to do that something again, you could make a career, and I mean this, you could make a career letting people know that A, the result that they want is still possible. You don't know how to get it, but you do know one way it won't work. And I guarantee you people would still listen. Here's why I say that. Even though you may doubt me, that's fine. Here's why I say that. Have you ever seen titles of books or ebooks or things like the following? Think about this. When you see a title that reads something like 12 things you must know before, or a title that reads and starts with 7 things to avoid or else, or the number one thing I learned from, you know what all those titles, the way that they start, have in common? They're all stories about what didn't work. And now, be it in an ebook, be it in an actual physical book, I mean, Before You Quit Your Job, that's a title, I believe, of one of Robert Kiyosaki's books, right? what you should know before you quit your job. Well, the reason, I'm almost willing to bet that the reason that book was even written was because he or someone he knew quit their job way too soon, and they found out all the things that they wish they knew before they quit their job. See, they had taken some action, they got some experience, they were like, this is not going the way that I had hoped, and now they know some things. And they wrote an entire book about all the things that they learned from the experience that they had, and then you and I go and buy that so that we can, quote unquote, avoid the bad parts of experience because we don't find any value in it. But there's so much value in getting things wrong. One of the things that used to get on my nerves a ton was when I would hear people say that you can't be afraid. And I'm like, no, learning to understand my own fears is part of the reasons why I can help people now, because I understand the fears that they're going with, but more importantly, the fears that a seller may have in terms of negotiations, and it helps me communicate with people just by being able to relate to them. So I'm kind of curious what you would say to someone who is maybe they're looking at, starting their business by writing their first offer. Maybe they're in the process of, they think they want to do an iPhone app. They think they heard about this thing called Cashflow, and they're like, man, I want some of that, but I'm too afraid. What would you say their response should be?
I like what you said. This idea of fearlessness is remarkably ridiculous. It makes for good marketing. It makes for sexy advertising. It makes for good slogans. It sells books because all of us have fear. And so if anyone says to me, be fearless, and I'll teach you how to be fearless, that's very attractive. The reality is it's ridiculous. There is no possibility of being fearless. The issue is not about having no fear. The issue is about developing courage, cultivating courage. Fear is biological. Every animal, every organism reacts in a defensive way against the perceived sense of danger. That's what we call fear. Fear is a response to danger, and the sheer reality of being alive means that we recoil, react to perceived danger, and that's called fear. So fear is biological. It is wired into every neural pathway in our brain and cell in our body. This is not a function of being fearless. Fearless would be either somebody who's dead or lobotomized or somehow mentally ill. Neither of those is a terrific option for an investor.
I'll skip those. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. And so the question is, how can I be courageous? How can I cultivate courage? And to your point, it's unavoidable that we're going to have to face the fear. And therein, again, that's one of the four virtues that I talk about in this hero's journey. Leadership as a hero's journey, life as a hero's journey, is that we're not going to be without fear. The question is, how do we relate to fear? And often what we're afraid of is the various potential damage we're envisioning downstream, right? So I could lose my money, I could lose my reputation, I could lose my comfort, I could lose my relationship. It's usually a sense of something that's going to be lost. And so the idea of cultivating courage, for me, as I mentioned before, begins with willingly facing what we'd rather walk away from. And I'm not saying conquering or defeating it or removing it, I'm facing it. Half the battle is willing to just be present to and be with and embrace that which we'd rather run away from. So whether that's a relationship that's in conflict or whether that's a belief that is in conflict, like, I want to start this, I want to invest, but I could lose my money, the market could go south. There's all these reasons why it could, but we have to face those reasons first. Second, I propose that. Go ahead.
No. I like this. Is because what you just hit on is something that I deal with all the time when I'm dealing with new investors in their relationships. They have this relationship to money and what has happened to them into the past that prevents them from taking the actions. Because the common, here's probably one of the most common things I get is, especially now, they're like, well, I had a lot of money. My 401k is now a 201k, and I've got that money back now. I've been able to make it back, but I'm afraid of it happening again. and then they can face things. They can know about things like inflation and the lack of social security and all the things that they're looking at in the future and go, well, that's so far off. I'm not as afraid of that as I am of losing the money today when simple math will tell you won't have enough unless you do something. And it's always just an interesting struggle to hear people how they're going to deal with it. And that becomes my question to them. It's like, I understand exactly what you're feeling. I felt feelers like that too. Many people do. I submit, and I'm very curious to hear what you'd have to say on this. I submit the difference between those who are successful and those who are not isn't, as you say, a lack of fear, because I don't believe that either. I believe it's how they've learned how to respond to those fear instincts and what they do because when they feel them. What would you say to that?
I agree completely because we all have fear. So it's a matter of how did we learn to deal with those fear instincts, to your point. And one of the things that I propose to everyone to do is to ask this very simple question. What am I really afraid of? What we're really afraid of, it comes down to one of three or four things. We're afraid of failure, right? We just don't want to look bad, seem foolish, or lose power and control. We're afraid of rejection. We don't want to be pushed away. We don't want to lose a relationship. We're afraid of humiliation. We don't want to show up as though we're stupid or incompetent in the world. And usually those three are sort of banging around in our heads, and they have their own versions in each one of us. But if I'm afraid of humiliation or rejection or failure, then I need to ask myself, well, what can I do to appease or deal with that fear? Because that's really what's going on. It's not the subs, it's not the market, it's not the rate. It's my fear that I'm going to look like an idiot. That's what I have to work on. That's amazing. Begins to give me a different angle than just dealing with, I'll make another plan. It's not just about another plan. It's about greater awareness.
So true. It's so funny that you said that last one. I started smiling simply because I often tell everyone there are two things that it's impossible to do simultaneously. You can't learn something and look good at the same time. And because we're so busy trying to look good, we never learn because we don't want to look stupid. And that's just funny that was one of the three. I had no idea that you're going to say that. So this is, and these are the very things, and, people come to me and they say, well, teach me how to write an offer. And it's not even about how to write an offer. It becomes a lot about how to deal with all this stuff that you're afraid of. And I just love it. And then the people who overcome that are the ones that end up, the ones that end up owning the properties and taking the next steps and starting their businesses and developing cash flow, et cetera, et cetera. And I find it interesting how willing you are to question, and you're asking us to question those very things. In fact, I'm going to start questioning more because, from that discovery process, this awareness, I can actually do something about it. If I'm not aware of it, I can't.
Right, and there's a couple other things we can talk about also practically for cultivating that fear, because just naming it is one, and then there's a couple others, not the least of which is exactly what you're doing, finding supporters, allies. Every hero in every story has to face great challenges on his or her own, but every hero in every story across all cultures, across all time, have had allies. It's either the magical ally or the friend or the sidekick. But the idea that we go it alone is perhaps the most debilitating of all the ideas to entrepreneurs, to leaders, and to human beings. The idea that somehow I am going to do this on my own, by myself, that I'm John Wayne, I'm going to ride in, I'm going to clean out the town, and I'm going to make everything right.
Right.
It's an addiction that's not serving anyone. The reality. I love what you said in the very beginning. I absolutely love it. Wealth is a team sport. And we can go even bigger than that and say success is a team sport, whether that's wealth and money, whether it's, spiritual evolution, whether it's building community.
Agreed.
Wealth, success is a team sport. And this notion that we do it alone is an immature impulse, right? I have two kids, and I remember both of them when they were in their 2-3 years old. It was all, no, me, no, I want to do it. No, me. And that's fine when you're 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years old. It's not so attractive when you're in your 20s and 30s and 40s or 50s. Get over it. It's about without working with others, including this idea of cultivating courage. It doesn't have to be alone. I still have to deal with it, but who's my ally? Who can I talk to? Who will advise me? Who will support me? Who will encourage me? Who will hold me accountable? That's an important contribution to this idea of cultivating courage. It does not have to be all alone.
No. And in fact, I say the weakest point is when you're by yourself, especially when it comes to real estate. And because that's what I think about. I think about real estate a lot for obvious reasons. And, another manifestation of that I've seen of that is when people go to buy real estate, they'll say things like, well, I'll just buy one house. And I'm like, well, that's your riskiest position. If you had 10, the other 9 can support the one if something happens. And that, it's that same thought process across many different avenues. And it's that thought process that allows us to expand our influence. And I think, that there are a number of people right now listening to you and I who have great causes, great things that they'd like to have happen, but they've got this in the way. They've got great passion and they got great enthusiasm about what it is that they're looking for, but they have I have to do it all by myself mentality. So what would you prescribe as a way to stop that? What are is there a practical? Is there something? Do I got to do 50 push-ups? What is it? Tell me, how are we going to get over this?
How are we going to get over this kind of urge to do it alone?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a maturation process. That is the hero's journey. That's the evolutionary process of our life. And I think how we do it is, at some point, you really do have to swallow hard and reach out and ask for help. And I think that the folks who are willing to do so. One element of it is education. People sometimes don't know that doing it on their own is a limitation. So if they listen to this program, if they listen to you, if they read my material, there's lots of teachers who are teaching that, success is a team sport, wealth is a team sport. I love that statement. And so getting that notion, being exposed to the idea, that's the power of education. So that's one. Then two, it becomes a matter of finding, articulating the intention. What is it that I want to create? So to your point, Jay is, he is earning $10,000 a month. Jay is earning $10,000 a month. I am earning $10,000 a month. There's an intention. There's a purpose. There's a goal. There's something you're striving for that is bigger than what you've accomplished in the past. And I think identifying that does two things. One is it gives you a sense of direction. Two, it raises all those fears and anxieties, right? Because suddenly you start thinking, well, no, I can't, I won't, I haven't, it's not possible. That's the conversation of anxiety in your head, fear in your head. And when you have that clear desire and you have some awareness around what you're afraid of, then reaching out to someone and say, help me, becomes much more concrete, right? Help me with what? Well, help me accomplish this. How can I help you? Well, this is what's coming up for me. Any ideas on how I can overcome it? And so we have to do a little bit of pre-work in order to make ourselves available to find a good mentor, a good ally, a good teacher. And that work in part, it says, state your desired outcome. What is your intention? What's your goal? What is it you're trying to create? One. Two, begin to become aware of what's getting in the way. And then you have to find somebody whom you trust and whom you look up to. And the reality is that sometimes the mentor or the ally will fall short. Sometimes a relationship doesn't work. Sometimes a person isn't who you thought they were. That's no reason not to do it again. Kind of like saying, I broke up with a girl, she broke my heart, I'm never going to be in a relationship again.
Right.
There's a logic to it that's not logical.
Right.
I don't know if we've all gone through it, but I certainly have. I've broken up with girlfriends. I thought, oh my God, I'm crushed. There's no way I can ever be in love again. And guess what? That didn't turn out to be true. So taking the small step to reach out to somebody who's familiar, who's trusted, who I feel safe with, that's a big deal. Safety. That would be the first one. I wouldn't recommend to somebody to reach out to their first mentor, to be somebody so removed and so distant from them, either in terms of authority or position or accomplishments, that it's hard to relate to them, right? My first allies, my first helpers ought to be people that I can feel safe with. But I need to reach out and saying, here's my objective, here's my goal, and here's what's going on for me. So there has to be a willingness to be somewhat vulnerable or transparent, right? I can't ask somebody to be my mentor, my helper, my ally, and then hide from them all the things that I'm struggling with. So set the objective, become aware of the inner dialogue, find somebody safe to work with, and begin to explore with them how to move forward, how to be accountable, how to be motivated, how to be encouraged.
Oh my God, it's so funny. We get a number of emails and calls from time to time from individuals who are reaching out, looking for similar help in this particular area of what we do. And occasionally they're wondering, why am I asking the questions about what they need help with and what's going on? And this is the very reason. It's like, I don't know what direction, I don't know where to send you. I may not be the person you're looking for. I don't know what to tell you. You may think I'm your solution, but I may not be. We may not be. I don't know. And this is so true when it comes to a particular investment. Many times people make an investment without understanding what they want from it and how it's going to affect their life, positively, and what the potential risks are negatively, and we just go in blindly, and it's bigger than we should have done, or it just doesn't accomplish the goals. And this is it's interesting to me hearing. It's like I'm having so many conversations with so many different people right now. I'm like, yep, this person and this person. All these names are coming to my head of people who I've dealt with. Who I'm going to do my best to make sure that they hear this one. This is so good.